Hello, my name is Kathryn Delve and I'm one of the tutors for the British Academy of Floral Art. So we're coming up to Valentine's this week, and this, I think, especially this year, is a time when we can show love of all types to people, because we need a little bit of love at the moment, don't we? So many of us are familiar with the universal symbol of love, which is the heart. So you can see I've got one hung up here, and these days we give hearts away on Instagram and like things on Facebook, but really the symbol of the heart is so important to us, and it can be used in so many ways. So often it's used at weddings because of the love, obviously, for the couple, and it can be used at funerals as well, showing the love for the deceased. And so it's a really important thing for us to use this symbol. Everybody recognizes it, everybody knows what it means, even more so now that it's on Instagram and on social media. So let's have a look at some hearts. Now we can have some commercially made hearts, so something like this, which is in the new biodegradable foam with a biodegradable back, and this has got a handle on it, so it could be hung up, and this could be filled with flowers. It could go for a funeral tribute, or it could be used on a gateway or doorway to hang at a wedding. If we want something even more environmentally friendly, this is like cardboard egg boxy type material, and so this is completely biodegradable, and this can be filled with sphagnum moss or something like that, and again used for a funeral or a wedding. And obviously you can buy commercially made wicker and willow hearts, which can be used for lots of things, or just to hang in home decor. Lots of people are just hanging them in their house, so that's a nice thing to do as well. So I'm going to show you a few different ideas on hearts that you can make at home, and I can tell you I have made all of these with things I've either got in the garden or things I've got in my workshop. So you don't, have to go miles and collect lots of things. If they're things you haven't got in your workshop, a lot of the things can be ordered online. So let's start off with one. I actually made this a while ago with my students, and it's just a heart made out of wire covered in wool. When we made it, we actually covered it with Genista. It was this time of year, I think it was this time last year actually, and it could be hung as a pew end at a wedding. It could be carried by a little bridesmaid, which is a nice thing to do, or again it could be hung as a decoration in the home, or on a gate, or on a pagoda out in the garden, something like that. So I'll show you how we made it. So we started off with some of these really thick wires, which you may not have at home, so you may need to, I don't know if you can see that, I'll bring that really close for you. You can buy these online. And then what we did, we put a tiny bit of glue on the end of the wire, and oh, I've got this all tangled up now in something I'm going to show you in a minute. Let's just untangle that. And then literally you just wind the wool around the wire until you get to the end, and then you can just put a little dab of glue on the end. Now if you've got lots of these to do, you could put the end of that in a drill, and that would speed the process up, make it a very quick process. So once you've covered your wire with wool, it will look a bit like this. Here's one I prepared earlier. This is very much a Blue Peter moment. And then you would bend it into your heart shape, and you'd have another one going the other way. Excuse me. And then you would form your heart like that. So what we did with this one, we covered 2 wires with wool, and then we bound it together here with wool, and bound it together here, and just carried the wires around the outside and bound them together here with wool, and then we just put a lovely piece of ribbon on it. As I said, you could bind little bits of gypsophilia on there, you could put little spray roses, lots of things. You could glue some flowers on there, some fresh or dried, and that makes a beautiful heart decoration for you. I've also made this in a similar way with willow. Where I live there's lots of willow, and so that's another thing to think about, making a willow heart. If you haven't got any wires at home, willow, and you can get hold of some willow, that's a great idea. So the next heart I've made is this one here. So this, I haven't covered the back of these hearts so that you can see what I've done. I've used straw, so just the type of straw you can buy animal bedding. Some of you may have it at home if you've got small guinea pigs or rabbits. And again, I used the thick wire, and I started off by making a frame, or just a heart-shaped frame with the wire, and then just took lots of straw and popped it into the frame and bound it around with the bind wire, the sort of thing you would use, and the real wire, sorry, black real wire, the sort of thing that you would use for making a Christmas wreath or something like that. You may have some left over in your store from Christmas, or you could use the bind wire, which is a paper covered wire, or if you haven't got any of that, you could use string. And so you form it into a heart. So I'll take that right up close. You can see I haven't covered the back so that you can see how I did it. And I put another wire in the bottom to give me that elongated heart shape. I had some tillandsia moss, dried tillandsia moss, in a box in my workshop. So I've covered it with that and then bound it with a bullion wire, so a decorative silver wire, and bind that on the top. Then I was looking around to see what I could put on it, and from my workshop I can see my neighbour's Acupa japonica, which has got these beautiful red berries on it at the moment. You may know it is spotted laurel, so it looks like this. Okay, and I learned something new today, because I was going to pin these berries on individually with some long floristry pins, but it doesn't work. I could not get the pin through the berry. They're really hard. Now, I didn't know that, so that was interesting. So what I did instead, I used some German pins, mossing pins, and I pinned little sprigs all the way down one side of the heart to just emphasize that bent shape at the bottom. And then I cut a house plant. Some of you may know this is called string of hearts, so very, very appropriate for this time of year. It's a house plant which I've got inside, and it grows these long trails of hearts. It's actually Ceropedia woodii, and it does get a tiny little purple trumpet-like flower in the summer, but this time of year there's no flowers on it. And I've just added that and did a little bit of veiling over the top of the berries, and brought that down to create this, and I carried it all the way down just to accentuate the line. So we've got a swinging heart there. So that's one idea. If you haven't got any tillandsia moss, never fear, you might have some dried reindeer moss, or you might have another type of material in your home somewhere that you could use. Maybe some sisal would be another idea. If you've got a bag of sisal that you think, oh, I'm going to use that one day, now's the time to use it. So that's another type of heart. So that's two types of hearts you could make. The third type was, this is a Muhlenbeckia heart. So again, I've got this growing in my workshop. I can see it from where I'm stood now. And it's a tiny little green leaf with this sort of twiggy effect on it. Now this will dry, this won't stay green like this unless you keep mist spraying it or keep it somewhere very cool. And when it dries, the leaves will shrivel up, but it does still look quite beautiful even in its dried state. And when the leaves eventually fall off, you will just have the bare twigs, and that looks beautiful too. So again, I used that heart shape that I'd already showed you before, and I bound the stems to the centre of the heart, and then I just formed a 3D heart. So you've got a nice 3D shape there, and gathered it together at the bottom. And I found a little bit of lace, which is always quite romantic. And again, that would be beautiful just hung in your home, or as a decoration, a pew-end for a wedding or something like that. Or again, just to be carried by a little bridesmaid. It's very pretty. So I just pulled the ends together and gathered it at the bottom. These are all really simple things to do. If you haven't got any of this Muhlenbeckia vine, have a look in your garden. You might have a small fine ivy that you could do it with, or any other sort of trailing type material that's a vine type material that you could work on. So that's another thought there. And then my final one, or actually I am going to show you two more. So this little heart was made using sphagnum moss. Again, you might have some left over. I've kept the back empty again so that you can see it. But if I was making this commercially, I'd want that back covered with something. Either take the moss all the way around, or you could put some hessian or some fabric on the back. So, but I left it so you could see it. So this is sphagnum moss, and sphagnum moss, again, you may have used it to make your Christmas wreaths. I've got some here. I'm just was looking for it under my workbench. Sphagnum moss is very strange. You can sort of mold it when it's wet. It sticks together and it's sort of sponge-like. So I just molded it into the shape of a heart, and then I bound it with string, trying to be a bit more environmentally friendly with this one, no wires. Bound it with string. And then I took some flat moss, which I already had. Now flat moss, I bought this from the wholesalers. You cannot take this from the wild. If you've got some in your garden, then you could absolutely use that. But taking it from the wild destroys the ecosystem. So this is grown specifically to be farmed. So I've covered it with flat moss, and then again I used German pins to pin that on. Now if you haven't got any German pins, you can always substitute and make your own. Just take a wire like this, just a normal thick floristry wire, cut it into small pieces with your, nearly used my secateurs to cut my wire then, don't do that. I cut it in, you can cut it into small pieces like this and just bend it, and that will work in the same way. So I German pinned that on, and then I've taken some hyacinth pips and I pinned those on with the floristry pins that I got out. These are just sort of silver long floristry pins. The ones I got out to pin the berries on with, and it didn't work. So I did find another use for them, and I just pinned these hyacinths on there. And this would make a beautiful ring bearer's pillow, and that's why I was saying if you were going to do it like that, you would need to cover the back. So I've got two little rings on there. They're made out of floristry wire, so I would hope that the bride and groom would have something a little more substantial than floristry wire rings. But a lovely way to present maybe an engagement ring on Valentine's Day if somebody wanted to propose, or two engagement rings if they're going to have one each, wedding rings, or again, you know, just something nice to be carried or at a wedding by a bridesmaid or something like that. So another idea for you to have a go at, if you're struggling to think, I haven't got all those materials at home and so I can't make anything like that, I'm going to show you a third and final method, and I really hope that you've got something like this that you can get your hands on. So you could do this with, I've got the real wire again. You could do this with string. It's a little bit more tricky to use, so that's why I'm using this, especially for demonstrating to you. I've got some silver birch branches here. Now I'm really lucky because I have these in abundance. Just 3 doors down from me we have 2 of these trees, so I'm really lucky because I can just get this at any time. If you go out, we had lots of wind last night. If you go out in the morning after the wind and find a silver birch tree, then there'll be loads on the floor around you. But again, if you haven't got silver birch, you could use willow. So I've taken all these little branches here, got a bit of wire, and I'm just going to bind that around there like so. So that's stage 1. Turn it upside down and split it in half. And bring it round into a heart shape. Try and make them equal. So I've got a little heart shape there, and then I'm going to bind it again with a piece of wire around here. Really, really simple. Job done. Now, to just make it look a bit prettier, after all it is Valentine's Day, I'm just going to add some beautiful ribbon. I'm using red ribbon. Red is obviously the colour of Valentine's Day that we're very used to, but you could also use again a lovely wool. So I've got a nice wool there to give a more rustic effect if you don't want to use the ribbon. And I've got one sticking out over the top there, so I'm just going to cut that off. And a lovely little heart decoration there. Really simple to make. You can make multiples of these and hang them up at home or on a gate. And all of these hearts, I mean, this one sort of particularly, I think, would look beautiful on a loved one's grave if you wanted to go and show your love at this time of year to somebody who we've sadly lost. So lots of uses for hearts, and they do bring us some joy at this time. So get creative, show us the pictures of your hearts. I would love to see them. I have taken still photos of all of these as well, so those will be put up. And do have a lovely Valentine's Day. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye bye.